Thank you very much. Sit down, please. Right, good afternoon, everybody, and warm welcome to this very special meeting of full council. And a particularly warm welcome to former colleagues and soon-to-be aldermen and women who are in the room with us today. It's very good to see you all again. Before we start, just need to draw your attention, as usual, to the safety procedures. Should there be any alarm this afternoon, please all leave the chamber by your nearest exit, out of the building and congregate on College Green near the cathedral. We do have COVID precautions in place today, so everyone's asked to remain seated 1 metre apart, and wearing face masks is advised except when speaking or if you have a medical exemption. So, item 2 on the agenda, apologies for absence. We have a few, so bear with me. I have apologies from councillors Sharon Scott, James Scott, Kevin Courtley, Henry Michelin, Graham Morris, Ed Plowden, Tom Hathaway, Tim Y, Barry Parsons, Lorraine Francis, Jenny Bartle, Jude English, Craig Cheney, Helen Godwin, Andrew Varney, Mark Bradshaw, Carla Denyer, Kerry Bales, Lily Fitzgibbon, Asher Craig, Tessa Fitzjohn and Chris Davis. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay, good. In that case, we'll move straight on to the main business of the day, which is the appointment of Honorary Aldermen and Honorary Alderwomen. And just before we start, I would remind those councillors who are speaking to nominate or to second nominations that your speeches will, as usual, be limited to 3 minutes, and the traffic light system will be in action for that. For aldermen and alderwomen making your acceptance speeches, I wouldn't be so crass as to try and limit your speeches, but I would just ask politely if you could limit yourselves to 3 minutes or thereabouts. It will make the afternoon flow more easily for those colleagues following you, and of course it'll give us all more time to enjoy the refreshments as well, so that would be appreciated. Thank you. So the first item of business then, as set out in the agenda, as recommended by the Audit Committee Values and Ethics Subcommittee, full council is asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Mark Brain. And I call Councillor Goggin of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I rise to for the very pleasant duty of nominating my friend Mark Brain to be an alderman, honorary alderman of Bristol. He served on the council, as I'm sure you all know, for 20 years almost. He was chair, vice chair of the Audit Committee and Resources Commission, in fact a founding member, and did some fantastic work along with Councillor Gollop, etc., in holding everyone to account. I remember having first met him around about a decade or so ago. I went along to my first CLP meeting and was introduced to himself and Derek as well, Alderman Pickup, and they welcomed me in, made me feel very much part of things. I've lost count of the number of meals I've had in his house. I've had countless whiskies as well, sitting outside in his back garden. And although I was a lightweight and only managed the Cohibas when Mark was on the Churchills, quite a few cigars as well. I've watched Super Bowls with him, with his extended family as well. He's a kind and gentle man, and were it not for the kind of gentler politics that came into our party recently, he'd still no doubt be a councillor, and it is a shame that we've lost him, so to speak. I've also served with him on the board of HWCP and Hawkspring, and it's been a pleasure all the way along. And I'm sure you'll all recognise his, I think it's a Stetson, I'm not sure, 10-gallon hat or along with his American links, and the tie that he insists on wearing, which has a horrible photo of me on it, but does at least have photos of all the other councillors over the years that he's served, both in Hartcliffe and then in Hartcliffe and Withywood. So I'd like to very much recommend that we accept Mark into our family of honorary aldermen, and I'm sure he has still plenty that he has to offer the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Councillor Gollop of the Conservative Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm both delighted and saddened to second Mark's nomination. As Paul mentioned, I was also a founding member of the Council's Audit Committee. Members actually allowed to meet the Council's auditors for the very first time. It was quite a remarkable experience. Mark and I think it's fair to say, had the benefit of being apprentices to the great John Bees, and we learnt a lot about finance, about politics, and about the way to interact. Like John, Mark never left any doubt about his socialist credentials, but that never stopped him seeking probity and financial integrity from whoever was in control at the time. Mark was never afraid to ask questions. And I can say that because I've worked with Mark both as a scrutineer and as being scrutinised. And I know when I got it wrong that he jolly well let me know I got it wrong. But I will say that Mark could make the strongest and firmest political points with sincerity, with kindness and warmth. You knew you'd been criticised, but you also knew it had been done respectfully, without bullying and without intimidation. And some in this place would do well to listen to that message. Now, it may come as a surprise to some, but I don't share Mark's politics. I don't actually share his taste in ties or American football. But none of that stopped me from giving him my total respect. Now, Lord Mayor, I'm the first to admit that I don't understand the working of my own political party, let alone that of others. But I am very happy to go on the record that I cannot understand any political party wanting to not have someone of Mark's calibre and integrity as a member of their group. I find that shocking, and that is why I'm saddened. I did say at the last council meeting when the Audit Committee annual report was presented that this place is the worst for the absence of someone so committed to pursuing sound governance. My Lord Mayor, having explained the reasons for my sadness, I can nevertheless say I am very pleased to second Mark's nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Mark Brain as Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Alderman Brain, would you like to come forward to receive your certificate?
Well, I've watched a few of these things in my time, and now it's my turn. Haven't been so well that he says it's going to be reasonably short, but I've got some people I need to thank. Number one is somebody who probably most of you never heard of, a fellow called Clarence Jackson. Clarence Jackson was chair of Hartcliffe Labour Party in the early 2000s. It was him that gave me my break and allowed me to be unleashed upon the council. I would never have got anywhere without him. I'm indebted to him for life. The next group of people who I wish to speak about are the people on this tie. So these are the 5 poor unfortunates who had to be my ward mate over the years. When I first arrived, it was Royston Griffey, and Royston and I have absolutely nothing in common at all. Nothing at all. Except that we get on like a house on fire. And there's nobody in this world that I agree with about everything. I'm sure it's the same for all of you. But Royston's the closest. We disagreed on almost nothing. We voted for the same people, everything. And he was a joy to work with. I think he was Deputy Lord Mayor half the time, about 3 or 4 terms or something. Then came along Derek Pickup, and then Derek for years before that. Derek, an excellent ward mate. Totally different skills he brought to the job, but he also brought great companionship. I can't see him now. Where is he? He's taking pictures of me. So yeah, unfortunately Derek departed too soon due to a certain amount of skullduggery at the time, and he wasn't treated very fairly at all. And then I'm left with an empty space. Who are we going to have? I wanted to make sure it wasn't someone that put forward by the people that had done Derek in. And there I was about to go off on holiday, and I went to a canvassing session, and there's this young woman there with a spatula in her belt and a red beret, and I thought she's got to be one of ours. And I didn't know her at all. She became my ward mate, and we are lifelong friends. And so out of the ashes of disaster came a great friendship. And then Naomi left, and they changed the boundaries. No longer was it Hartcliffe. I lost Headley Park, which is a shame. I like Headley Park. And so then I got to with Paul and Helen. Paul, incredibly passionate, a man of deep feelings, and a man who really, really cares. And any time Paul speaks, you should listen to him, because it comes from the heart with Paul. Helen, what a class act. Unbelievable. If there's been a better ward councillor in Bristol than Helen Holland, and I don't know who it is. Absolutely fantastic, and left me in awe sometimes of her ability, especially when it came to casework. Incredible. And so those are the 5. Now, when I was first elected, my first account, I thanked everybody, I thought. Then I missed somebody out, and it was the wife. Boy, was I in trouble. I'm not making that mistake today. None of us can do this job without the support and care of the people that love us. And that is certainly true of Colleen, who for 18 years put up with me not really being around very much. Perhaps she'd like me not being around very much. But yeah, she put up with it all, and she supported me, and that's absolutely marvellous. I'd like to say something about councillors in general, if I may, before I wander off and it's Barry's turn. You often hear phrases about people in politics as having noses in the trough, only in it for themselves. I've not met people like this. Not in this chamber. I've met people who bicker and row. Of course I have. But all I've met is people who have their own beliefs and who've become elected to this chamber to make this city a better place as they see it. And by the way, the city not only gets great people of divergent views, but they also get them on the cheap. I mean, there's somebody did a thing whereby a backbench councillor was rated to be working below minimum wage, and it's an absolute disgrace. I couldn't say it when I was a councillor. I can now. The city should cough up, and you guys should get paid an awful lot more than you do, and that includes the mayor, by the way, who's for what he does is also underpaid, in my opinion. I think that's just about it. Thank you all for putting up with me, and good luck for the future in running the city.
Okay, so we're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Barry Clarke. And I call Councillor Jackson of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As Jeff said, it's a great honour, but also a bit sadness that I'm standing up to propose and nominate retired Councillor Barry Clarke to get the accolade of Honorary Alderman. I knew Barry quite a few years before he became a councillor in 2011, and I think he got elected for his how many times he tried prior. But Barry was very well liked by the residents in his ward of Hengrove. He lives there, and I got to become a great friend of Barry even before he became a councillor. And I sort of used that friendship to my advantage over the years. I put Barry on lots of things he didn't want to go on, and he actually didn't turn up for one meeting, and he ended up chairing that for around about 6 years, corporate health and safety. And he's had some big shoes to fill from Labour chairs of corporate health and safety, DZ. But I think Barry brought a different type of politics to that. Every group could see Barry's passion for the staff of this city. And I think he did an excellent job, and we're all very sad that he's not standing again. I did try to get him to stand again, but I think with his new job, and prior to that, his old job, it actually cost him money to be a councillor, I think. Well, Barry sat on lots of committees within the council, the Downs, outside bodies, which I think he found quite enjoyable. Licensing, and another committee that I put him on without him knowing, it was the ITC working group, because me and Barry was on it. They wanted somebody who was sensible and an idiot. Barry was the sensible one, and I put myself on as the idiot so that we could see if we can get the ITC to work. But Barry is an excellent ITC, that was his bag. But he sat on communities, licensing, lead on for Labour on people, which was a new task for Barry, but he took to it with great relish, as he did with everything. He's a great socialist, Barry, although when you heard him speak, you know his politics, but as we said before, he was very generous with everybody, and you wouldn't sometimes think he was Labour, because he took everybody in with him and tried to take everybody along with him, especially on the corporate health and safety. And I don't know who we're going to get to from the Labour Party to do what Barry did. So it's my pleasure to nominate Barry to be an honorary alderman. Thanks, Bas.
Thank you very much. And I now call Councillor O'Rourke of the Green Group to second the motion.
I rise with great pleasure as well to second Barry's nomination as an alderman. Barry Clarke was actually the first councillor name that I ever knew about in Bristol. Before I even thought about local politics or local government or anything about Bristol City Council, I knew Barry Clarke's name because I was a teacher and I had the pleasure of teaching Barry's son Ben in year 11. And I was an English teacher, and English wasn't probably Ben's favourite subject. But I want to recount this particular story because I know everybody will identify with it and hopefully take pleasure in it. One day I was marking an essay or something, sitting beside Ben and just talking to him about things. And a pause came, and the next minute he said, "Do you know, miss, my dad's a city councillor." And I didn't even know what that meant, so I sort of looked and he went, yeah, he's a councillor. He's been elected by the people of Bristol, and he's a councillor. And he said it with such pride that I was really sort of starstruck by that, and it's always resonated with me ever since. And I know, looking around here, all of us who are parents today, if you can ever say that whatever you did in your life, you got your 16-year-old son to speak about you with such pride, it is a great credit to a man. And I also say that, you know, for me, coming into politics, it set the bar for me, because I think we all need to do that. You know, the youth of this city need to be able to feel that they can speak about what we do with, you know, with that level of pride. It mattered. What we do matters, and we need to make sure that we rise to the bar that's set to us by the youth. So then, when I came into the council and I met Barry, of course, you know, the face was there, it was great. And we sat on quite a few committees together. My favourite times probably would be on the Downs Committee, where those of you who sat on the Downs probably know what it can be like in the meeting. And sometimes the merchant venturers can seem as if they come from a slightly different world than we do. And I'd look across the chamber and I'd just catch Barry's eye. And I know we were both grounded in our realities. So I think I'm very happy today to say that I hope that Ben Clarke, an older and very successful young man now, will be able to go through his life saying not that his father is a Bristol City Councillor, but that he is an Alderman of the City of Bristol.
Thank you. So I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Barry Clarke as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Alderman Clarke, would you like to come forward and receive your certificate?
Thank you very much. Just to clear up the one with Councillor Jackson, I didn't get invited to the first meeting. I was left off the list. That's how I ended up with 9 years as a chair. Thank you all. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank you all for giving me the honour of becoming an honourable alderman. However, my greater thanks has to go first to the residents of Hengrove, and then later on, after the boundary changes, to the residents of Hengrove and Whitchurch Park for the honour they gave me and elected me to be a councillor and become part of this chamber. I hope that through my actions, I have both benefited them and also the residents of Bristol as on the whole. I'd like to thank all the councillors and the officers for the support they have given me over the years, and also to my family for the support they've given me to be able to do this in the first place. Thank you very much.
I regret to say that our seconder for Margaret Hickman's nomination has been delayed. We'll be here in approximately 5 minutes. So would it be possible to swap round? Is that going to ruin everything? I'm really sorry. I'm sitting here sweating in my seat, looking at my watch.
Very well, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. I'm so sorry. Cheers.
Right. Okay, so we will come back to Margaret Hickman in just a moment, but we're first asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman to former councillor Jeff Lovell. And I should say we are conferring this title on Jeff in absence today as he's unable to join us. But I call Councillor Jackson of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It is a real honour to stand up, and it's quite an emotional time, for Jeff, to propose Jeff as an alderman. We were firefighters together. We lived in the same streets for years and years. He was my boss in work. He ends up chair of our Labour group in his first year. He's boss of me in here. And then he becomes Lord Mayor. So he's been my boss for as long as I can remember. So it's quite sad that he's not here bossing me around now. But he's a good mate of mine. He's done 14 years in this council, and he's given his heart and soul to Philwood. He's sat on I think he sat on nearly every committee in here, except one, which is Public Rights of Way and Greens. And for any of you who knows Jeff, the reason for that is it means walking. And Jeff didn't do walking very well. In fact, Jeff didn't do walking at all. And I'm sure the reason he became Lord Mayor was that the car could park there, and he never had to walk up from the car park down the bottom. But him and Bridge loved their year as Lord Mayor. She didn't really want him to do it. In fact, Jeff took a bit of cajoling into it. But at the end of the day, they had a fantastic year. And even when he was Deputy Lord Mayor for a year, he enjoyed that. But like I say, 14 years. He's Philwood born and bred. His fire station, he finished at Bedminster, was in Philwood Ward. And not only will I sadly miss him, I know a lot of the residents who know him personally. He was a Willetton Road boy, then a Morpeth Road boy, then Leinster Avenue, which is 3 of the roads I've lived in. And I was out doing something a couple of weeks ago, and somebody came up and said, "How's Jeff going?" And I said, "He's not a councillor anymore." And they didn't realise that. They just thought that Jeff was going to go on forever. And obviously, the reason he's not here today, he's been quite poorly recently. But the only reason he won't want to come, he's trying to stay away. Some of the treatment he's on, his immune system's gone down a little bit. So he's just staying away from big crowds, really. So it is an honour to have served for 14 years with Jeff. I still go and see him regularly. And I go and get his paper some days because he can't be bothered to go and get it. But like I said, I did try to put him on Public Rights Away, and I can't say what the reply was in here because I'll get chucked out by the Lord Mayor. So it's just an absolute honour, and I am quite sad he's not my ward councillor, to propose Jeff as an honorary alderman in his absence. And I will be seeing you afterwards about presenting his medal, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. And I now call Councillor Kent of the Lib Dem Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I second the motion moved by Councillor Jackson that we award the title of Honorary Alderman upon Jeff Lovell, who served as councillor for Philwood Ward for 14 years. Of course, Jeff was only able to represent the second best ward in the city, but thankfully for him, he did live in the best one. My resident, Jeff Lovell, has served the city all of his life. Councillor, Lord Mayor, Avon Fire Authority member, and of course 30 years as a firefighter here in this city. In fact, Jeff's the third resident today of Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward that we have we've awarded the title of Honorary Alderman to, just as proof that Hengrove and Whitchurch Park is the best ward in the city. Thanks, Jeff. As Lord Mayor, Jeff certainly had to deal with some testing council meetings, but he did this with fairness and respect. He was also diligent at visiting and showcasing the work of charities and groups across this city. We served together on the Avon Fire Authority, where Jeff's knowledge and 30 years' service in the fire brigade was invaluable. I know Jeff was a passionate supporter and member of the Whitchurch Folk House, and I'm sure this had no connection at all to the cheap beer at the bar. Of course, it's not all about work. There are the fishing trips to fill in the gaps. Jeff and Chris's fishing trips are tales of legend here in the council house, a bit like the legendary tales they used to tell about the fish they caught. In awarding Jeff this honour, as a thank you for many years of public service, we also thank Jeff's family, who have stood by him and actively helped him. So thank you, Bridget, for your service as well. I know Jeff is keen that we do not go on today, and so I'd just like to express the true gratitude of the Chamber to you, Jeff, and thank you for all the work you have done. Thank you.
Thank you. So I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Jeff Lovell as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. And as we know, Alderman Lovell isn't here today to receive his certificate, but Alderman Lovell, if you're watching on YouTube, we all send our very best wishes and congratulations, and I look forward to seeing you soon to present it to you. I think a round of applause would be in order as well. And so we return to the previous item. We are asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Margaret Hickman. And I call Councillor Alexander of the Labour Group to propose a motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Marg Hickman is not someone who would wish to be honoured, and I know she's here today with a certain sense of reluctance. And it could even be that she was persuaded by some of her friends that it is entirely appropriate, because it is entirely appropriate for her to be here today as someone who has given her heart and soul to this role since 2011. Most notably, Marg was Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods in 2016 and Labour Group Leader for an astonishing 5 years nearly. Her other committee roles include many years on DC's A&B, OSM, Neighbourhoods and Resources Scrutiny, and Children's Services Scrutiny in 2011, and Adult Social Care Scrutiny in 2013 to 14. But I think she would most likely to be remembered as Ward Councillor for Lawrence Hill. And I know that her devotion to the people of that ward still keeps her busy. Because of Marg's bravery, many would hardly be aware that she overcame serious illness in 2016. But thankfully, she has been restored to the very picture of health she is today. Marg was and remains first and foremost a people person. Most at home having a chat with a struggling colleague, and least at home in a budget, task and finish group. And I can testify to that fact. Her warmth and humanity have won her the esteem and deep affection of many councillors, past and present, as well as the residents of Lawrence Hill. I hope that the award of this honour will ensure that we continue to see her in this building for many years to come, to encourage us with her ready smile and her laugh. It's my honour today to propose Marg Hickman as an Alderwoman of the City of Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Councillor Mohammed of the Green Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, everyone who is in the City Hall tonight. On behalf of the Green Party, I would like to second Margaret Hickman's nomination as an alderman. Margaret was a truly dedicated local councillor who always gave her all to helping her constituents in Lawrence Hill. There are so many people she helped through the casework and advocacy work on an individual level, but she also did so much at the community level too. For example, when Felix Road Adventure Playground faced closure due to the cuts, she tirelessly worked for residents getting signatures for a petition to be heard before full council, which ultimately led to it being saved. She was always available to listen to the residents and do her best to get the best service possible for local people. Whilst our political views might differ on a personal level, I can say that she has always been friendly and welcoming, and I know that my Green colleagues in the ward would agree with me. It is a pleasure to be able to support this nomination on behalf of the residents of Lawrence Hill, and to thank Margaret for her service for over the years. Thank you, Margaret.
And so I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Margaret Hickman as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Hickman, would you like to come forward and receive your certificate?
Forgotten. It's not long. Thank you so much for those beautiful words. I feel quite emotional, so please excuse me if that comes over while I'm saying these few words to all of you. It's a delight to be here. Being made an Alderwoman is a real civic honour, though not nearly as much of a privilege as I found serving the people of Lawrence Hill for 10 years. I most enjoyed getting to know the communities of the ward, and would like to think that, feeding in that daily local intelligence, I was able to help us make a positive and lasting difference to their lives. This is surely one of the only reasons why anyone stands for election. I'm so proud to see Marvin re-elected, to continue to do just that, and I'm proud to carry on serving as trustee of Felix Road Adventure Playground, which continues to go from strength to strength. During my time on the council, I met so many dedicated councillors and council officers, all trying their best, all trying to do much more with far less over the last decade. Over the past 18 months of the pandemic, Bristol Local Authority key workers have rightly, at long last, had some of the wider recognition that we know they richly deserve. One of my lower points may have been getting overheard, unmuted, during my last budget meeting. But I do console myself that it was not as bad as Hansford's website or the Department of Health CCTV. I was also proud to serve on the Women's Commission and know that we still have more work to do to make this chamber look like the city it serves, especially in terms of female representation. Having chaired and then led the Labour group for a number of years, I want to thank party colleagues and workers for their support. As well as Marvin and my friends being conferred with titles today, it feels right to take a moment to reflect on the contributions of those who have not been honoured today. I'm particularly thinking of Ruth, Carol, Tom, Jill, Kai, Afzal, Celia and John. While I might not always make it to the Alderman and Alderwomen's benches for every council meeting, I do hope to be there when full council confers status posthumously on the late, great Mike Langley. Finally, I'd like to share one of my favourite quotations from Mayor Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you so much.
Okay, full council is now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former councillor Olly Mead. And I call Councillor Renard of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and forgive me while I stand like this. I'm on crutches at the moment from a unfortunate football accident where I just tried to kick the ball and it went pop. So, Olly, you know, it's really an honour for me to be able to propose you today as the councillor that's got big shoes to fill, having taken on your responsibilities in the Horfield ward. Olly was a hugely respected local councillor, a very diligent caseworker, and did a huge amount with Manor Farm, which is a sort of an important part of the Horfield community, working quite closely with many to secure much needed funding for a community hub that I'm hoping before I leave this term will finally be built, and there's every hope that that will happen. And you know, it's a crucial thing, and he's been an absolute advocate through and through to ensure that could happen. Olly was also a diligent caseworker, helping many residents with challenging situations, not least on sort of the many housing issues that there often are within the ward, something that I know is familiar probably to many in the chamber. And, you know, Olly, you were on the council for about 7 years, so first elected in 2014 and then returned with a hugely strong majority in 2016. I think that really showed the impact you'd already had 2 years into your role. You were also a staple of the Audit Committee and also chairing it in 2016, 2018. And I think there wouldn't be anyone in here that would disagree with how seriously Olly took his duties on the Audit Committee and the huge amount of time that you dedicated to that role. Equally, I think it would be fair to say you took the same attitude and commitment to the Development Control Committee. I think, if I read my notes right, you were on it for the entire time you were a councillor. Yeah, so, and, you know, hugely important work, serving on both DCA and DCB. I know sort of involved in many a controversial decision, as often planning can be, as we all well know. Olly was also an active member of the Bristol Labour Group and also wasn't afraid to take on additional roles and responsibilities. Included the Vice Chair and LGBT Officer of Labour Group from 2018 to 2020, as well as the Labour Group Treasurer, and also the Campaigns Officer as well. You know, you were also a mentor to me, really helping me to understand what we needed to do to improve Horfield Ward, and obviously helping us to turn that ward to 2 red Labour councillors in 2021. So, you know, for that we are obviously hugely grateful, and you know, it really is a pleasure for me to be able to nominate you today. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, and I call Councillor Fodor of the Green Group to second the motion.
Lord Mayor, I'm delighted to rise to second this motion and to honour Olly Mead as an Alderman of the city. I've known Olly since he was first elected to the council on the same day as me in 2014, and from that day onward we worked together on development control, and of course he was also one of my local residents, so I'd often see him out and about in the ward. But most of the time we'd be sitting in development control meetings. Here he showed his dedication and interest to the effective role of the committee, as you've heard. No one else on committee would have taken as much trouble to read all the reports and spot the issues that needed to be clarified or weighed up to make sensible decisions. His insight and hard work was always worth listening to. And as chair of committee for a while, I was always glad to hear his contributions. In fact, he took such an interest in the work of DC that he subsequently applied to take the Planning Master's degree at UWE, and I was very happy to offer reference. After all, he'd shown such a clear interest and understanding of planning, and we need people who can make such good decisions. Of course, he was also known for his dedication to Audit Committee, which he chaired for a while. It's a vital part of the council's proper management. I didn't serve on that, so I asked ex-councillor Clive Stevens, who was vice chair, about this, and he said he really appreciated Olly's patience and time explaining things, and his jokey style. And the biggest joke of all? Apparently, Olly was told off by officers for injecting too much humour into meetings. It might be that this could bring Audit Committee into disrepute, apparently. As if that needed any help from Olly, says Clive. Olly also served on the Oversight and Scrutiny Management Board, something that mustn't be taken too lightly, as the effective scrutiny of the council by the backbench members of all parties is essential as a good part of decision-making. But he also managed to avoid the excesses of the tribal politics in the council chamber, something most of us around the chamber really appreciate. However, above all, Olly was known for his humour in the council chamber. As an entertainer in his other life, he had a natural, self-deprecating sense of humour, and we all appreciated that and looked forward to his contributions. A meeting where Olly was going to speak was far preferable in the otherwise dire and dry hours we spend in this chamber. We miss you here, Olly. Congratulations on the title.
And so I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Olly Mead as Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Alderman Mead, would you like to come forward and receive your certificate?
A microphone? I'd love to, but I'm quite shy, my Lord Mayor. Of course I'm not shy at all, and I prepared a speech last night, and as with my tradition, I'm going to have to move this a bit. As with my tradition, I've ended up jettisoning it during the meeting while listening to other people, paying tribute and thanking people who'd helped them along the way. I want to actually thank a couple of people quickly. Jacko, the whip for the Labour group, for being a great support at times in ways that he knows probably better than anyone else should. And Claire Hiscott, my Tory co-councillor, who, in spite of being a right-wing and very loyal Conservative person, for bizarre reasons we got on very well. And I think actually it was the fact that we could have a laugh, sometimes at her expense, but she provided great ammunition on occasion, and it was always I remember at our first Rush Sunday service, she was wearing that fur thing around that all the councillors have to wear. I think it was probably fake fur. I greeted her with the words, "Hello, Cruella." And it was a kind of fun relationship that she enjoyed. But I think people often make a mistake in thinking that people who have a sense of humour don't necessarily have a serious side as well, or the ability to be serious. But there is such a thing as a meeting that can be too dry and a bit too boring. And so, especially if I'm in a position of chairing or have access to a microphone, then I like to try and put a little bit of gravy or custard, depending on your preference, onto the proceedings to take away a little bit of the dryness. I actually got into a little bit of trouble once as chair of Audit. Apparently I was a bit too tough on some people at a meeting. It was the day when we looked at the £29 million overspend during a financial year, and for some reason I was not impressed. I can't think why, but if there's one thing I hate as a good socialist, it's public money either being wasted or not spent as it probably should be, because I can see all the very good ways in which it could have been spent and ought to have been. And I know I upset one or two people behind the scenes by taking quite a strong stance on things like pointing out a couple of issues about the arena proposals or I remember that metro bus meeting. Anyone else at that? Helen was there. It was about 12 and a half hours that day, wasn't it, of meetings and briefings and site visits. And I had this weird experience of these men being very sweet and charming to me. I'd never met them before, and I thought, I've not even been on a date where I've been welcomed so much before. What are you after? Because when, I know I'm a little bit thinner today, well, actually quite a lot thinner today, but when you're a fat person, you're not used to being sort of this sort of level of charm being directed towards you. But all good things come to an end, and I have to confess, I actually haven't missed being a councillor at all. I thought I probably would do, but it turned out that I didn't. I think, you see, you had the advantage of getting to listen to my speeches. I had to sit through the other ones and never got to hear, never knew, and I didn't know today what I'd end up saying when I had that microphone. But there were some great other people. I just want to also thank the Labour Support Office. They do a lot of good work behind the scenes. I know all the support offices do, and I also know that on occasions when there's no one from your own group there, it's always possible to find out how to do something or where the stationery is hiding this week from one of the other groups. And so I'd like to thank their officers too for just, it's little things like the occasional envelope. Anyone ever look for an envelope in City Hall, you'll find that's a devil of a thing to find. And of course, it's always fun when the printers jam up in the kitchenette area. So that's something I don't miss either. I got some wise advice from Ron Stone when I started out. In fact, I learned a lot from him and Jenny, and any awkwardness I showed to people in authority, I think I picked up from them. And they'd be honoured that I said that about them, because it was always useful to upset the right people or to ignore unhelpful rules on occasion to get something done. But Ron advised me to take up something outside of politics to occupy my time a bit. And so I decided to do an afternoon drawing class just up the hill from here. And that actually led on to a big part of why I ended up leaving office, which was to do a Master's in Fine Art degree, which I can assure you was great fun to finish off last year during lockdown. My studio space was in Cardiff, and it was locked. My library for research was in Cardiff, and it was locked. And I had to work out, and those of you who know how technological I am, how to do a distance tutorial, and also to show my final exhibition, which somehow fitted into our front room. Thank God I paint small, unlike that thing up there. Can you imagine if I'd have done a series of those? Don't worry, my parents are actually in the audience today, and I just want to reassure them that will never happen, or at least not while I'm living with you. It might happen in a public space, hopefully. And in fact, I'd like to thank them for all their support over the years, the help they've given behind the scenes, and just the times when, and especially during the last year with lockdown and everything, I've been sort of shielding as a clinically extremely vulnerable person, and it's been a tough time for a lot of us. And I think the thing I want to point out also is that when people say they'd hate to pass on corona to someone that's vulnerable or whatever, you just don't know who is and who isn't when you're out in the street. And there's a reason why the advice in many countries is to wear a mask in shared spaces. It's just a good idea. It's an airborne virus. And hopefully that will help to save a few more lives. But yeah, I think don't be afraid, my dear friends, to upset the occasional person, especially if it's the right people. Don't be afraid to question those in authority, even if they're from your own party. I know that's not the advice I should be giving, Jacko, but it's too late now. And I did miss, however, at the final set of council meetings I attended, the fact that because we were voting remotely, we didn't have these wonderful gadgets where occasionally your finger could slip onto the wrong button during a vote. The meeting, always accidental, Jacko, just for the record, always. But always worthwhile as well. And yeah, and a big thank you to everyone, because there were so many of you. It was a great pleasure to work with across party lines and to try and get good things done. At its best, and full council rarely was its best, we could ally around sensible ideas in meetings and get stuff done. But full council was always a bit of a party political bun fight, and that's the bit I think I miss the least of all. But I miss most of all, of course, all the fun times at planning committees, going through all the bits and bobs and details, and at audit, finding out what was hiding in 800 pages worth of papers, or that kind of thing. So I'd encourage you, read your papers, think for yourselves, upset the right people, and have a bit of fun while you're doing the work you do. I know you work hard. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So we're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Mhairi Threlfall. And I call Councillor Bennett of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a pleasure to speak in favour of Mhairi's nomination as an Alderwoman. A huge congratulations in order on the birth of baby Ewan as well. It was nice to get a Labour gain early this year, at least. Mhairi's contribution to Eastville and to Bristol makes her very deserving of this title. From the first time I met Mhairi, when she was also the Cabinet Member for Transport, it was apparent the passion she shared, working for residents of Eastville and for improving transport across the city. I know, like me, Mhairi is a keen cyclist and a proponent of active travel, but now that she's finally passed her driving test, she might be able to make use of the parking space that comes with this. I've spoken to dozens of people in Eastville and City Hall who have all sung Mhairi's praises and credited your hard work as a councillor and your never-ending energy to make a difference. One thing I've heard very different accounts of, however, is the pronunciation of your name. But whether someone's praising Mary, Marie or Mhairi, they're all in awe of all we've done. There are a lot of stories I could tell, but one particular highlight that demonstrates your commitment to community engagement was when a developer in Speedwell came to you looking for suggestions as to what to name a series of streets. It was your decision to consult the community and ask them for what they thought they should do, and ran a poll. This decision led to the very appropriately named Ronstone Road, of course after the long-serving councillor, and Kenny Lane after the Bristol suffragette, Annie Kenny. Topping the residents' poll, however, was the absolutely marvellously named Cheers Drive, a phrase many of you will have used. Still makes me laugh every time. Twice, Mhairi has been a formidable parliamentary candidate leading an excellent campaign that's given her Tory opponents a proper scare. It's a shame the national situation wasn't in our favour on these occasions, as I have no doubt you'd make an excellent Member of Parliament. I hope you haven't given up on this ambition. On a personal note, I couldn't think of a more appropriate topic on which to make my maiden speech than to move this nomination. I owe a huge debt to Mhairi as my predecessor. It's almost 3 years ago now when you took me for a coffee and you encouraged me to stand in Eastville. I had so many concerns about what life would be like as a young councillor, whether I could do it, and you couldn't have done more to put my mind at ease. And your support through the very long campaign was absolutely incredible. So I've got huge shoes to fill, and thank you so much. So, Councillor, it gives me great pleasure to move this motion to make Mhairi Threlfall a Bristol Alderman.
Thank you. And I call Councillor Weston of the Conservative Group to second the motion.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I'm delighted your baby's awake. I was slightly concerned with my booming voice that I was about to do the unthinkable. You never wake a sleeping baby. I've got two. Yeah, anyway. It is a great pleasure to second the nomination. Congratulations on your maiden speech. Possibly the most pleasant one you'll ever have to do. Mhairi and I share a bond. The joy of a general election bruising. Twice. It's such fun. The exhaustion that goes with it. You never quite get over it, ever. It's hard at this point, because we've heard so many speeches, to actually come up with something new. Something that no one's spoken about. I can't top Cheers Drives. I'm not even going to try that. Although I'm going to try and adopt that somewhere in Henbury and Brentry. And then claim it was my idea. But the one thing that's not really been touched on, I think, is how councillors behave in the cabinet. And I just want to touch on this. As an opposition councillor, there's always that thing, when we're in full council, we tear chunks out of each other. You know, that gladiatorial, we all strip into each other, we all hammer away, the barb, the heckling, and then you wonder what's going to happen afterwards when actually you have to go to the cabinet and say, look, actually, I've got this little, local ward issue. What do we do? Now, the best cabinet are those that put aside what happens in this chamber amongst the, I'm soon to be Olly Mead ceiling, I'm sure, and that they help out. They understand the difference when we're all serving our communities and the role we play in this chamber serving parties and community, that sort of relationship. And Mhairi was excellent at this. If you had a problem, if you needed to talk about issues on the A418 or the CPNN, the transport issues, you could go down, you could sit down, and you could talk it through. And it was it was pleasant. You knew you were going to be heard. You knew there was not going to be any revenge extracted for whatever heckle you gave the night before. You're biding your time. I'm suddenly not looking forward to the next few minutes. But Mhairi, you were excellent at that. And I really want to thank you for that. Your best colleagues do the same, but you were really good at it. And certainly it put my mind at ease as Backbench Councillor knowing that actually you would deal with it professionally when there was a local problem. And I'm sure my colleagues would join me with that. So thank you. And we worked together on the, I'm looking at the title on it now, the Mayoral Congestion Task Group. I'm never actually quite sure where that went, but I did enjoy the time together as we tried to tackle some of the quick wins. So it's a pleasure to second the nomination. I wish you all the best. I hope you get some sleep at some point, possibly during my speech. But I look forward to your reply to this with some trepidation. Congratulations.
So I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Mhairi Threlfall as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Threlfall, would you like to come and receive your certificate?
Wow, thank you so much. It's always incredible when people are talking about you. So it's a real pleasure to be here today. And I was thinking, actually sitting up there, that I haven't really been in this chamber for 18 months, which is a significant time period. So it's odd to see everyone in 3D today, not just on the screen. I think the thing I appreciate most as a councillor was brevity, so I'll try and keep my comments as short as possible. I've also not really addressed adults in a while, so I'll attempt not to go into baby speak at some point. And apologies for you and heckling earlier. I'm teaching them that at the moment. So so I just wanted to really say thank you, and I think my thank yous would start really with the people of Eastville. It was in 2013 that one additional person who turned out to be multiple people, because all I heard from residents for the first year was that they were my one votes, and their wife was sick, or they weren't going to vote, and they went through. But it was incredible, really, in 2013 to kind of win by such a small margin. And that completely changed really the trajectory in terms of my life and in terms of things that I then engaged with. And it's been a real pleasure really representing Eastville for the last 8 years. A lot of fun as well. There's been a lot of serious issues, a lot of housing casework, environmental concerns, development issues, things that Marley now has the pleasure of tackling it. I'm very much a person who believes that problems can't be solved by the same thinking that has created them. And for me, I really enjoyed my 8 years, but I was getting to a point where there needed to be that new thinking, there needed to be that fresh blood to kind of come in and start driving forward and representing the constituents of Eastville with that same level of passion. So Marley, it's great to kind of have you sitting here today as an elected councillor. I also just want to thank my group in general. It's a real pleasure working with all of you throughout everything that kind of we went through over those years. Obviously, initially under Mayor Ferguson, and then of course having Marvin elected. Seeing that difference between being in opposition and being in power was actually quite interesting. Having those two sides of the coin. And it's not an easy job. I think Alderman Brain really has kind of set it out that it's a challenge. It's a responsibility and it's a challenge being a city councillor. So it's been a real pleasure really with working with everybody over that length of time. Finally, I just really want to say thank you to my family. Over the last sort of 20 years, I've been doing something with my evenings and weekends, whether it's canvassing, whether it's casework, whether it's attending meetings or full council. So it's taken up a lot of my time. So it's a real pleasure now to be able to spend my time now with my baby and family, and kind of take that family first approach over the next few years. Who knows, I might be back eventually, but for now, just a massive thank you and good luck.
Thank you. We're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderwoman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Estella Tincknell. And I call Councillor Holland of the Labour Group to propose the motion.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and it gives me enormous pleasure to nominate Estella as an Honorary Alderman of the City. She's a socialist, she's a feminist, and she was a fantastic councillor to work with. The list you've all seen, so I'm not going to rehearse it, because almost every committee that exists in the council, Estella at one time or another had been a part of, and she'd had involvement in so many areas of the council's services. And what I saw in Estella, which isn't necessarily true of everybody, is that when we would say to her, can you sit on this committee or that committee or take on this responsibility, some people would just go, yeah, and then bother to find out what was involved in it. But with Estella, I think her background as a librarian and then as an academic meant that she actually questioned what that would involve. And then when she took on those roles, she really, really forensically supported the work. And I think it is worth saying that, and it's been touched on by some of the other colleagues, but having somebody who knows something about the area that officers are trying to persuade you over is always a bit scary for the officers. And I think when we put Estella on the library review, for example, as a former librarian, I think that did give the officers some maybe sleepless nights. And her, obviously her professional interests as an academic and in the cultural world did mean that when she was on the cultural bodies, many of them that are listed in the papers of the city, that she was really bringing that knowledge to those roles. When I asked Estella to consider putting herself forward as the deputy leader of the Labour group as it then was, I think she was really surprised. And I do think that thing about encouraging people, it's what Marley said about Mhairi encouraging him. It's a really important thing that we have to do as councillors, and to encourage people to take the step that we've done and to ascend that ladder. And Estella never disappointed in that role. She led, and Marvin knows this, she led on the policy development work at that time for the 2016 election, and she did a fantastic job. Another thing I want to say to Estella, and I don't know if she ever would have noticed this, but when she speaks, or when she spoke in council, There are some people who speak in council and we're all going around doing our emails. When Estella used to speak, everybody listened to every word and you could have heard a pin drop in this chamber. The sad state of the politics of the Labour Party a couple of years ago has already been mentioned by a colleague, but I think it's true to say that Estella and Jill, who as has been mentioned, isn't going to be given this honour because of the criteria not being quite met. But Estella and Jill were an absolutely formidable team for Lockleys. And I think we can say that Lockleys is a better place for their contribution and the city a better place for the contribution of Estella. And it is, as I say, a great privilege to be able to nominate her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I call Councillor Dyer of the Green Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise with pleasure to second the nomination. I'm a relative, well, like quite a few of us in this room, I'm a new councillor, but I also feel like I've served a long apprenticeship, and I've had the opportunity over the past few years to get to know quite a few of the councillors of all parties that are going to be, are either now Aldermen, Alderwomen, or are going to be later today. And I've learnt a lot from talking to many of them. To try and encapsulate what I learnt from Estella, I have to try and find a way that I say this without upsetting too many people. But what the hell, most of them I'm going to upset on men, so I don't care. Politics tend to attract people that, unfortunately, are very good at blowing their own trumpets. I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. Some of us come from backgrounds, to be honest, where if we didn't blow our own trumpets, nobody would listen to us. What I learned from Estella is something slightly different, that although it's great to have some trumpet blowing, you sometimes do need that, you also need sometimes somebody to come along and play a bit of piano to soften the effect and to involve other people as well. Although, don't make the mistake of thinking that just because somebody is playing the piano when they speak, that they're just going to be soft. When people have taken advantage or tried to take advantage of Estella, she can be hard when she wants to be. And when I say some people, I'm going to continue with and stretch the piano metaphor a bit further. Many of you will have seen a film called The Piano, directed by Jane Campion. If you're not familiar with Jane Campion, if you speak to Estelle later, she can give you a recommendation for a very good book about her work. But in The Piano, it's basically about somebody who is unable to use their own voice. And I think one of the things that we all hopefully are conscious of, but sometimes need to be reminded, is that there are lots of people in this city who are not able to get their voice heard, not just in the city, but beyond and across the world. And one of the things I have learned very much is that we need to be able to play that piano music occasionally and allow our voices to be heard, the voices to be heard of those who don't usually get the chance. So I'm very pleased to be able to second the nomination. And also, if you want to buy a book for somebody for Christmas, talk to Estella later. Thank you very much.
I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Estella Tincknell as an honorary alderwoman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderwoman Tincknell, would you like to come and receive your certificate?
Wow. Well, it's a bit like listening to your own obituary, this, isn't it? You know, I'm not dead yet, but thank you so much for those lovely tributes and for mentioning my book about the piano, Tony. Your commission's on its way, you know. Okay, so I want to start by saying thank you to my fellow councillors for honouring me with this. And I also want to say that I hope that this will also act as a further recognition of the enormous importance of the arts and cultural sector to Bristol, whether it's in the form of a new Channel 4 hub, which we're immensely proud to have here, whether it's Bristol having had the status of City of Film, UNESCO City of Film conferred upon it, or in the work we're doing on the History Commission, on which I'm extremely proud to serve. I have been very proud to have been a voice for the cultural sector in the city from when I was first elected in 2013, and also, of course, in my role as a cabinet member for arts and culture. And I hope that's a legacy that will continue to live on. And I also want to say thank you very much, especially to Helen Holland, who has been a great mentor and support throughout my years as a Labour councillor. And I think who in her tenacity, strength and wisdom has given me an exemplary role model to follow. Now, she is one of the many wonderful women, both within the Labour Party and across the city, most especially in Lockleys, whose principles, values, energy, work and comradeship I want to pay tribute to. First and foremost, my fellow Lockleys councillor and friend, Jill Clarke, whose commitment to our shared ideals made our work together a pleasure. So thank you, Jill, for being on the journey. I hate to use that expression, but I can't think of another one. The journey with me. Now, there are many other women, such as Margaret Hickman, Ruth Pickersgill, Diane Bunyan, Helen Godwin and Brenda Massey, who continue to stand up for women, both in the public sphere of the City Chamber and organisations, and the more private spheres of activities and support networks across the city. And in Lockleys especially, where it is women who are doing so much of the work to support local communities and to provide the social glue that binds us. Their work has been especially important over the last 18 months. So I want to say thank you to all of those women, both inside and outside the chamber, and also to say, carry on with the struggle to make this city a better and more equal place to live and work, as I intend to do. And to my fellow councillors and colleagues and comrades on the Labour benches, and indeed across the gangway, thank you for this honour. And finally, to Marvin, Mayor Rees, thank you for giving me the chance to serve as Deputy Mayor, and for your leadership and commitment to the home city, which we both love and sometimes hate, but love mainly. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to serve Lockleys and to serve this city of ours. Thank you, everyone.
Right, the meeting is now going to adjourn until 5 p.m. There are refreshments being served in the conference hall, to which everybody is welcome. And those returning for the second part of the meeting, please do be back in your seats, ready to commence at 5 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being in your seats in time to start the meeting. That wasn't aimed at you, Fee. So, we now move on. As set out in the report, on the recommendation of the Audit Committee Values and Ethics Subcommittee, we're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Charlie Bolton. And I call Councillor Stafford Townsend of the Green Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, Charlie Bolton was our first Green councillor, having been elected in 2006, following years and years of very hard work in order to get elected, and has therefore been our longest serving councillor. Once elected, he achieved many successes, including getting council to set up and adopt over 40 or so policies on climate change, another 40 or so on sustainable transport, and he also helped save the Bristol to Bath railway path from becoming a bus rapid transit route, and started the campaign to give local communities a better say in how to spend their Section 106. Charlie has been twice the leader of the Green Group, and he's also been deputy leader to many, including myself as leader, and he provided much needed support and advice and wisdom. He influenced Bristol Council to begin work on improving air conditioning quality and for more sustainable transport and affordable housing as well. He was central to the still relevant Let Bristol Breathe project, and also for getting through the first clean air zone motion through council. But of course, as good as a councillor as Charlie was for Ward and for the city, that's not what we are going to be remembering him for. We'll remember him for being the grumpiest and surliest grouch ever to stand in this chamber. So, and despite being elected very many times, Charlie always claimed to be furious about actually winning. So I've asked my colleagues, past and present, for their favourite Charlie story. And so one of my favourite ones was former Councillor Telford. Told me he was following a very heartfelt speech from Rob about the blight of seagulls being a blight of humanity, and how we as humans are leaving our mess out for them to be drawn to. And serious points about waste management. Charlie left barely no time before miming shooting seagulls in the chamber as a response. Another was at the election count where Charlie tapped the shoulder of a newly elected councillor and laughed and said that they were now personally responsible for everything bad that has ever happened or will ever happen in Bristol. And I think we can probably agree that's quite correct. Charlie also advised us all as new councillors to be in a slightly bad mood whenever we speak in the chamber to make our speeches go better. I'm not taking that advice today. Charlie has been a constant since I joined the Green Party, and he's the best possible support I could have ever asked for when being a councillor previously. And I'm very sad that he's not here this term round. But also, a Green Group meeting was never quite complete unless Charlie stormed out of it either. And so, whilst it's my disappointment that we don't have Charlie with us on the benches this time round, making Charlie an elder person today is top trolling, because he'll be ever forever tethered to this chamber and to the council. So, as well as being famously furious at having to serve another pandemic year, a year ago, I feel our new alderman protests too much. You're very greatly missed.
Thank you. And I now call Councillor Clarke of the Liberal Democrat Group to second the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, my Lord Mayor. I rise to second the former councillor for Southville, Charlie Bolton, as an honorary alderman of this city. I was going to read out a great script about you, but I don't think I will. I'll just go a little bit off message if you don't mind. I do remember when you were first elected in 2006, and I have to say that my heart went out to you, because I think we all appreciate in this place what a lonely and difficult and challenging environment it must have been to come into. And I say this genuinely, Charlie, that being on your own as a councillor here can't have been easy. and I think you did it in a very unique way. You sort of, I see you wandering down the corridors. Olly Mead talked about the difficulty of getting or persuading somebody to give you an envelope, and I can imagine you must have had that 10 times over, persuading people to give you information, access to things. And I just, I do commend you for your stickability, because it is not easy. And, there's nothing better in this chamber than to have a bunch of colleagues to talk things over with. And I know you had a party behind you, but actually being here and staying here for such a long time when you were started out as a lone councillor, I think you are to be commended for and congratulated for. So thank you. I actually feel quite honoured to be given the opportunity to second your nomination today, because there's so much to say about you, and I think your unique delivery is probably one of those things. The way you deliver speeches in full council, I think probably one of the most memorable ones for me was when you referred to the council chamber as, you just made the analogy that you just had something delivered to your allotment recently, and I think we all got that immediately. And I just think your delivery is very memorable and unique. With great sense of humour, I think. I think that's probably the way to put it. One of the memories that I will have, and I didn't actually witness it, but when I spoke to colleagues and said that I was going to be seconding you today, they said, you have got to watch YouTube. And I was chairing the meeting at the time, so I clearly didn't see it. But when we were doing full council on YouTube, people did other things when they were attending the council meeting. And I watched it back, and you were doing the ironing. And it's magnificent. If anybody wants to see it, I can give you the link. It's absolutely magnificent. But the thing that is even better is we had a minute's silence, and you stopped ironing, stood still, end of minute silence, and I think you were ironing a sheet at the time. I was so impressed. One, that you're multitasking, ironing sheets, who does that? And it was absolutely brilliant, and I just loved that. And I roared with laughter. I physically laughed, and anybody who wants to see the clip, I can tell you exactly where it is and the date it was there. But thank you so much, Charlie, for all that you've done for this city, and I think that you have literally started a movement within this chamber for the Green Group, and I think they should be very proud of you today. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Charlie Bolton as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Bolton, would you like to come down and receive your certificate?
Thank you very much, everybody. I should have written a speech. Well, I have written a speech, but I don't think it's very good, and I'm sort of out of practice with them. So, not entirely sure what I'm going to say. I mean, I sort of thought that just thanking you and stopping there would be much appreciated by you, because you're doing about 13 of these, aren't you? But I'm not going to do that. I found me notes. Oh, no, that's the blank sheet of paper. Yeah, so yes, thank you very much for honouring me in this way. I mean, I really do mean that. I mean, I suppose I've finally joined the establishment, but it's you voted for me. I'm wearing a tie. I hope the Tories appreciate that. I've dressed up. It's even possible that my mum's watching on YouTube. I don't know. And I'd like to thank both Annie and Joss for your kind words, and particularly Joss, you nailed that. because my first 4 years as a councillor, when I was sat next to you in where you are now in No Mate's Corner, was, it was hard work. Because when I came here, I'd never actually made a speech ever before, and I had no idea what was going on. And for some reason, Peter Abraham always seemed to be the Lord Mayor, and you'd sit there and try and stick your hand up in the meeting, trying to get him to take notice of it. And sometimes he would, and sometimes he wouldn't. But then you ended up thinking, no, I've got to make at least one speech a meeting just to make sure they know I'm here. And I did that, and it was just hard work. And given I'd never made a speech before, it was quite challenging for me. So when I look at this lot now, I have to say, I think we've moved on a bit. So well done. Excellent election results. Given I was the first Green councillor, I could argue if it wasn't for me, none of you would be here. Just a good. And I'd like you to remember that in February, in the budget meeting, hour 5, Amendment 16, when Gary's going again, because I'm going to be at home. And while I'm aware that as an alderman, I have the right to come and sit in a privileged position within the council chamber, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be busy that night. I was wondering what my biggest achievements were as a councillor, and I think somebody just already mentioned about the Clean Air Zone, which was 5 years ago next month, not going so well from what I can make out. But I think back to one of the first things I did was a motion about what was called Friends of the Earth Big Ask, which was a campaign before the original Climate Change Act, and what they asked for was emissions, to lobby for emissions, cuts to emissions by 3% year on year. And we got the motion through, and up until a couple of years ago, it might still be the case, that the council will still seem to have a target for its own emissions of making cuts of 3% a year for its own body of stuff. See, I can't remember all the words anymore. I should confess at this stage that the only reason it was applied to the council's emissions was that the Tories brought an amendment to do that, but they're Tories and are therefore not allowed to have any credit. And finally, I suppose, I was wondering what advice I would give to any new councillors. And I can think of some things. Having a pretending to listen face is one of them. And if there's something you really want to do, make sure you do. There's a guy called Ben Barker in Southville, who Helen will undoubtedly know, who's a legend locally. He said, just don't get distracted. They'll pull you every which way. But just make sure you go on and do what you want to do. If that's, well, just make sure you do that. My problem was I never knew what I wanted to do in the first place. Just getting elected was surprising enough. And I suppose the final thing is I just sort of think maybe we should be a bit more forgiving of each other. I just sort of, there's something about this place where we sort of sit there and see what's wrong with what the other people are doing, and actually we all do that ourselves, and maybe if we just lightened up a bit every now and again, hey. Anyway, thank you very much for this. I wish you well with your endeavours. Good luck with the future. I've seen the future. It's a sandy colour of green. Thank you. Goodbye. Which way do I go?
Are we back to where you were sitting, or the public gallery, or back to the Thank you. So we're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Stephen Clarke. And I call Councillor Dyer of the Green Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise with pleasure and honour to nominate the second of my predecessors to be an Honorary Alderman for the City and County of Bristol, the place of his birth. Steve has fulfilled many roles within the council. He chaired the Resources Committee for 2 years. He also served on OSM and on Development Control Committee. What I'll say about Steve has a background in the legal profession, and while some members of my family might not be too impressed by that, the reality was able to bring that skill to analysing and looking at what goes on in the council. And I have tried to learn from both his example and, despite his best attempts to tell me not to, also from Mr. Bolton as well, Alderman Bolton. When trying to talk about Steve, there was something that came up when I seconded Estella earlier on, is about not being controversial. But I think it's only fair to mention that Steve has been very focused on a very important matter, something that divides this chamber and divides the city, and it'd be one of me not to mention it, and that is whether Bristol City will ever get bloody promoted to the Premiership. We have spent many a time pretending to be discussing important council policy and budget amendments, and in reality we've been talking about who should be in Bristol City's back four or what midfield position they should be performing. Unfortunately, the powers that be at the club never listen to our advice. I've been told that I should get used to that. But I think what I'll finish off is by saying this. I have been very lucky with the councillors that have represented me. I'm not going to embarrass some people about who represented me when they were in Artcliffe or when I lived in Artcliffe, because it might betray somebody's age. But what I would say is when I moved to Ashton Gate in Southfield Ward, I was lucky enough to be served by Sean Bainan of the Labour group and by Tess Green. I then had the privilege of having Charlie Bolton as my councillor, and then he was joined by Steve Clarke. I now have Christine Townsend to try and make me look better. I did ask my wife about the other councillor for Southfield. Her response was the jury's still out. I am very privileged that Steve and Charlie are still there offering support and offering advice. And Lord Mayor, I can think of nothing better for me to have done today than to nominate former councillor Stephen Clarke to be an alderman of the City and County of Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I call Councillor Gollop of the Conservative Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Steve brought a whole host of skills and experience to the council, and probably different skills and different views to those that many of us had experienced before. Most of all, his views on social value turned me from a sceptic to a convert and helped to highlight to me the power of social value, and actually an interesting and probably rare occurrence where the interpretation of a green sustainable economy and a belief in the free market for the sole trader and small business actually could produce something that was really beneficial for the residents of this city. Now, Steve played an important role in chairing the Resources Commission, a calm and reasoned voice on Osm. And I think that's something, and Tony touched on it, a calm, reasoned voice, not the confrontation and the argument, but the how can we move forward, how can we resolve, how can we contribute. And not mentioned, but Steve also chaired the medium-term financial plan budget task group last year. Now, I know most members don't find that the most exciting thing in the world, but actually it's one of the most important things that happens in this council, and chaired it ably. So in his 6 years, Steve's more than made his mark, and certainly another councillor who will be sadly missed. I am very pleased to second this nomination. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And so I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Stephen Clarke as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Clarke, would you like to come down and collect your certificate?
so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wasn't quite sure who people were talking about sometimes listening to that, but thank you really for those kind words. So I'll start by saying it was a real honour to represent the local residents where I live, and I enjoyed my time in office hugely, actually. I appreciate the chance to give some return to the community where I was born and the place where my parents were welcomed when they arrived from Ireland during the war, or just before the war. The issues I involved myself in while I was in office included the sort of very hyper-local ones. One that I see most days, for example, is the local road by a school that myself and Charlie managed to get closed. But there are also some with wider consequences. For example, I spoke in support of the declaration of the climate emergency in this chamber, which has had national and I guess international significance. I also worked to get some important motions through the chamber. The airport one, for example, was fairly recent, and I managed as part of my planning committee role to make some small difference to how Bristol actually looks, the buildings. My children laugh when I go on about the fact that I helped preserve the tall, old laundry chimney near the M32 when I made a fuss at a planning meeting. I enjoyed chairing the committees that Jeff and Tony have spoken about. I was also chair of the initial WECA committee, and I think through this and other committees I really learned the value of cross-party working. I always really admired the way people managed to leave most of their politics at the door when they came to committee meetings. The real truth, of course, though, is that most of the transformational work which occurs in Bristol occurs away from this building and goes on in local communities. In my view, the council really need to listen to these communities as much as they can and make sure they empower their action. We need a truly inclusive process that results in priorities being decided by people and then decisions being implemented by politicians. Of course, we need to engage with young people as they can bring great energy to a movement of change. We certainly discovered that when they became involved in the airport campaign. I suppose it's really about giving space to people to talk about their worries and fears. For example, after the Brexit vote, a woman approached me in the street and told me that she wanted to visit her sick mother in Germany, and she was really worried that she wouldn't be able to get back in. Reassuring her felt like a task that wasn't written in any job description I'd been given, but it certainly felt like a valuable contribution. I understood her concerns at some ancestral level, as I myself come from immigrant roots. My parents were Irish, as I mentioned, and came here during the war. They had some really hard times due to ignorance and prejudice, and clearly that must have had an impact on me and the values that I believe in. I wish they could be here today. The Irish really helped to build this place, literally. For example, I don't know if you knew that more than 1,000 men, mainly Irish, laboured by hand with spades for 3 years to carve out the new cut. I'd love to see a plaque raised to those strong men. So huge thanks to everyone in this room and beyond in the council who've helped me in my role as councillor. I really appreciate it. But I must end by thanking my wife and children who are at the back. I'm so pleased they managed to be here today so that I can do that personally. There's a real burden that's often underestimated in being the partner of an elected politician, even at a very local level. It's not really thought about. I would say I couldn't have managed this without your support. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Ashley Fox. And I call Councillor Gollop of the Conservative Group to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Members, I'm sorry it's me again, but I do realise that I'm part of a very select band of councillors who were on council before Ashley got elected in 2002 and are still here now. and therefore it's inevitable that you hear more from us on these occasions. So I do apologise for that, but I am delighted to rise to propose the nomination of Ashley Fox. We've known each other for longer than either of us would dare to admit in public or on record. And we've done that in a variety of capacities. We were both chairman of our local constituency associations and then as ward colleagues. Ashley was elected in 2002, taking over the seat from Westbury-on-Trim that was previously held by the late Alderman David Poole, who'd served for 30 years. Ashley soon brought his sharp mind to meetings that he chaired. His record for brevity puts mine and everybody else's chairing skills to shame, as meetings would be finished almost before they'd started. And members left them not really knowing what they just agreed to, but it worked wonders. So, and that reputation went before him. Like so many of our nominees today, Ashley was good at the strategy, good at the detail, but he was also good at the community campaigning and helping us to get our message across. And interestingly, you know, I think that's what we all do in our patches, irrespective of what party label we happen to be doing it under. So we made a good team and we worked well together. But I think it's true to say many of our colleagues in this chamber over the years aspire to higher political office. Relatively few achieve it. And I'm not making a party political point here when I say that of those who do achieve it, not all necessarily cover themselves in glory. But Ashley performed at the highest level in the European Parliament until Brexit and a minor swing against the government of the day terminated his term after 10 years and just before he'd have been expelled anyway when we left. It does, however, mean that fortunately Ashley's in the country for long enough to actually receive this nomination. So, Lord Mayor, it's been a pleasure for me to work with Ashley in many capacities over many years, and I'm glad as a council we now have the opportunity to recognise his many talents and contribution to our city. I am delighted to move this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now call Councillor Clarke of the Liberal Democrat Group to second the motion.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I rise to second the former councillor for Westbury and Trim, Ashley Fox. Ashley, I know you served from 2 till 10, as you said to me just now, and I served on children's scrutiny with you, and I concur with everything that Councillor Gollop has said about, and I've written it down, your brisk, well-managed and very speedy meetings, which were always very, very focused. That's what I wrote down. And I think that's probably a trait and a theme from your legal background, I would suspect. But it was a real class act in terms of chairing skills. And some of those skills may well have rubbed off on me, I suggest, when I became Lord Mayor. So thank you very much for a lesson in firm and controlled chairing. Before I stood up here today, obviously I did a little bit of research and I did the usual Wikipedia search on you just to see what you've been up to. And it's probably fair to say that your career in this chamber is maybe a smaller part of your life. But I would hope that this was a good training ground for the greatness and the range and breadth of achievements that you achieved after you left here. So I thank you so much for, obviously your skills that you brought to the chamber and to scrutiny whilst you were a councillor, and it was an honour to serve with you. And I'm sure that you will add the title of Honorary Alderman to the collection of your already well-achieved gongs along the way. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Ashley Fox as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Alderman Fox, would you like to come down and receive your certificate?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Very kind of you. Thank you. My Lord Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for conferring this honour upon me. And thank you, Jeff and Jos, for your kind words. As you said, I was elected in 2002, and that was quite a vintage year. We had Alderman Griffey, who was elected. He's had the good sense to leave. John Galandris was elected in Stoke Bishop, another fine vintage. And who else but Gary Hopkins, elected the same year. So I think that was quite a good year to be elected. I enjoyed my time serving in Westbury-on-Trim, and together with Jeff, we ensured that a massive Sainsbury's was not built in the heart of our village, and instead we got a primary health centre. We ensured that the park at Canford was massively improved, and those small improvements to people's lives, I think, is what makes it worthwhile being a councillor. I want to conclude simply by thanking my wife Julia in the audience for her love and support during my career. It's a great honour to be an honorary alderman, and I thank you all. Thank you.
We are now asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former Councillor Claire Hiscott. And I call Councillor Weston of the Conservative Group to propose the motion.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. So earlier on, I had a conversation with Claire about what I'd put in my speech. I gave some ideas about the things that I would include. I was promptly told no, and I've had to restart entirely from scratch. What happens at conference stays at conference. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1936, and no, I'm not referring to anyone's service or age or anything else. In 1936, Herbert Hoover described democracy as a harsh employer. And we as politicians are well aware of what that means. A stern mistress indeed. You were elected in 2013 with a majority of 13, I think. In 2016 with a majority of 1. Those 3 to 4 recounts were fun. They blurred as to exactly how many there were. And we've all got stories like that. But Claire was an excellent councillor. She served her community well, improving parks, the issues on illegal encampments. There were schools, parking problems galore around Southmead Hospital, an issue that I know colleagues of Southmead will know well. It's those little things that you dive into that really make the difference. We would like to think that it's as glorious speeches we make here, where we, get our side cheering and the booing, but actually it's the difference to people's lives. It's when everything else has failed, they turn to the council, and if you can fix it, that's what makes it worthwhile. And Claire was excellent at doing that. But she also served the city in a greater capacity on the cabinet. She was chair of the People's Scrutiny Committee. That expertise of health and education is widely valued as we continue to tackle things like the SEND issues coming out of COVID. And I think that knowledge, that experience is going to be missed, not just in Horfield, but I think across Bristol. I think we're all going to miss it. Now, I would say in this chamber, we will miss your intelligence. I think the city will miss your dedication. I think Horfield will miss that devotion to detail. We'll miss your good humour as they try and, tie in my right-wing extremists as I wander off into the wilderness. And I'm going to miss my friend. It was a pleasure, personally, to serve with you. You were an excellent deputy leader, and I'm going to miss that. Jeff now has to keep me in control. God knows how that's going to work. My Lord Mayor, having put up as 5 years as my deputy leader, I don't think there's anything anyone else needs to do in order to be an alderman. Possibly a sainthood is required, but I thoroughly recommend Alderman Hiscott. You'll be excellent, and thank you.
Thank you. And I now call Councillor Hume of the Labour Group to second the motion.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to second this motion to nominate Claire Hiscott as an honorary Alderwoman. I met Claire only very briefly, mainly in Toronto Avenue with her incredibly young supporters with their pizza boxes at the May election. At the count shortly afterwards, I really appreciated your graciousness, Claire, thank you, as well as your kind welcome email. And I hope you don't mind me quoting the line that you signed off with, which is, wishing you all the best in Horfield and hope you have as lovely a time as I did, working with some wonderful groups, volunteers and residents. And thank you, Claire. Yes, I am. Thank you. Several constituents have spoken to me about Claire's work, sometimes when I've asked them, but more often it's been unsolicited. One resident who was sort of nearly always at the top of your inbox, I expect, thanked you very much for getting a traffic junction upgraded, so now is much safer. A second resident is grateful that she can now ride her mobility scooter through the gates into Monk's Park. And I do, every time I walk through those gates, Claire, I think of you. And another resident would like to pass on her thanks for supporting the campaign for the Manor Farm Community Centre. And as Councillor Reynolds and I said earlier, we expect spades in the ground for this very soon, fingers crossed. I've also spoken to colleagues about what they knew of Claire's life in City Hall. And I'm told that within the council, Claire was respected by all the council officers and colleagues that she came across during her two terms serving Horfield. Claire was supportive and friendly and saw her role in scrutiny as a critical friend, which meant she was easy to work with cross-party on the various committees of which she was a member. Claire is a pharmacist by trade, and as Councillor Weston mentioned, she brought her professional expertise and her understanding of NHS systems to her role as chair of People's Scrutiny Committee. And my colleague mentioned as well that during her tenure as chair, she led a great deal of important work, including scrutiny inquiries on SEND, as well as giving thoughtful presentations on the inquiry's finding to OSMB, to Cabinet and to full council. And a number of those pieces of detailed work are now embedded into the council's action plan to address these issues. And now the issue probably very close to my heart is that women are still underrepresented in some parties in this council, and even more so during Claire's time in office. And colleagues in the Labour Party recognised that you recognise this, and that you worked to make City Hall a more welcoming place for women by reaching out across political divides to build relationships with female councillors. As well as this, they report, Claire looked to foster a more conducive atmosphere for debate. So rather than the combative style, which has perhaps been traditional, I think that Claire has contributed to making a more consensual style, which I hope will encourage more women, particularly on the benches over there, to run for office in future. I recognise that despite being in different parties, holding very different views in many ways, Claire was a committed representative for the people of Horfield who played an important role in City Hall, so is very worthy of being made an honorary Alderwoman. I'm happy to second this motion and wish Claire all the best.
Thank you. I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Claire Hiscott as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Hiscott, would you like to come and get your certificate?
Well, thank you so much. I didn't think I was going to get at all emotional, but I'm just going to have to hold it together. It is an absolute honour to be made an alderman of the city of Bristol. And I'm an alderman because I'm a human. And until that changes, I think we'll go with the historic tradition. Now, I think I'm looking out, and so many of you are new, and I don't know you. And it is quite possible that you're already bored out of your heads, listening about people that you don't know and you didn't know what they did, and you might not actually be that bothered. And also, sometimes tradition and civic ceremonies, they get a bad press. People are a bit ooh about tradition. But you know what? It was tradition and ceremony that really grounded me when I arrived, because I was told, don't worry, you won't win. In fact, Nick, I'm sure they said, didn't they? The Conservative group said, don't worry, you won't win. You're going to just fill a gap. It'll be fun. Well, 8 years later, finally, I didn't win. But you know, the first thing I went to was Rush Sunday. And I just want to pick out a couple of things from that I learned that grounded me. Because I didn't come with a plan, and I didn't come with an ego either, and I still haven't managed to get one. You go to Rush Sunday, it's fab, there's cake. But you learn some stuff from it, because you all rock up in your lovely robes and you process round the church and then up the main aisle. Not quite sure why, but we've done it for over 500 years. And it tells you very clearly, you weren't the first, and you are not going to be the last. There have been councillors, mayors and aldermen for so long you can barely remember any of them. And it's not about the politics, and it's not about the person, it's about the office. That's what the city, that's what the residents are looking to you as their councillor to do something. And I just, you know, it's great. You arrive and you're given a whole load of stuff to do, and you don't necessarily know the person that's handing it on. But, you know, all the best. Now, when you walk up that aisle in the church, it's called Rush Sunday because it's got lots of rushes and flowers and grass, and it's lovely. And the advice from councillors who've done it before is tread carefully, plant your feet firmly and try not to slip up. And I think that's sort of good advice for being a councillor. Because you do have to tread carefully. You have to remember that you're going to be you are handed various successes and failures and weird stuff, and you think, how did it get like that? But you muddle through and you try and get everybody on board to solve it, and then eventually you give that stuff to somebody else, and they look at it and go, how did that happen? But the final thing about that service is that when you walk on those rushes, you get this amazing fragrance that comes up from those grasses and the flowers. And it made me think, what sort of smell do you leave as a councillor? You know, you kick up that smell. Are you a breath of fresh air, or have you kicked up a stink? And you know what? I've tried. I really did try to be a breath of fresh air. Occasionally, I kicked up a stink. And I want to say thanks to Mike, particularly, for answering those emails graciously and actually getting it sorted. So I have had a fab time. And if you're new to council, go to Rush Sunday, because it will ground you. 500 years of people coming and going in this city, and it's been an absolute privilege to be that little piece of a jigsaw. And you know what? You're not the be-all and end-all. And that is what being a councillor is about. I've had a fab time. Mark, such a good friend. Will I miss the Star Wars jokes? Possibly not. Do I miss the cider, the beer, and the crisps? Yes, I do. And team, you've been just fab. I've loved working with you. You've been such fun. John Galandris, I'm going to miss those Tic Tacs that you would hand out noisily around the council chamber. Have we got any today? Any Tic Tacs? Excellent, good. But, you know, I've had some great times. Brenda, it's been good to work with you. Helen, you know, Fee, didn't we have a good time on that cabinet? And for the record, I'm proud of being on a rainbow cabinet. It proves it can work. So I've had a fab time. You've been some dear friends. Mark, I've super missed you. But you know what? There's more adventures, and I am absolutely indebted to my long-suffering husband, who I said, don't worry, I won't win. And I texted him saying, it's okay, it's going to Labour. Only not for another 8 years. So thanks. We've had a blast. We've done some good stuff. And now I'm passing the baton on. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Now, full council is asked to approve the appointment of and confer the title of Honorary Alderman of the City and County of Bristol to former councillor Sultan Khan. And I call Councillor Hopkins of the Liberal Democrats to propose the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, Sultan has done some of those jobs that are so important to this authority to get done right without being overly party political or flashy. I had experience of him chairing planning committees, very, very well indeed, and also public protection. His knowledge of the taxi trade was very impressive. And he's a peaceable man. He's a quiet man, sometimes underestimated because of that. But basically, he does care about things, and despite being a quiet and peaceable man, he shares my view on injustice and is basically prepared to do something about it. One of my best friends and colleagues over the years has been Steve Comer, who used to be the councillor for Eastville before, or just overlapping with Sultan. We used to get, our party, a lot of the Bangladeshi vote, and all of a sudden it disappeared. And it's very true that Sultan, as well as being a great representative for Eastville, is a great representative of the Bangladeshi community. And in this last election, accompanying him around some of the mosques, which I bumped into a lot of old friends there. It was frustrating to find the number of people who wanted to vote for him but who lived in neighbouring wards. So we have 8,500 Bangladeshi heritage people in Bristol, and they themselves are a great asset to this city, and Sultan's a great representative of that community. He has actually been he was originally with another party, but his focus has always been on serving the people in his area. And the party didn't seem to make that much difference. But we were very, very glad when he joined us. And he fitted in very well because of his commitment to community and because of his commitment to looking after his residents in the very best way that he actually could. I'm glad to be able to call Sultan a friend, and I hope that everybody will support this nomination for somebody who richly deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now call Councillor Eddy of the Conservative Group to second the motion.
My Lord Mayor, I rise to second the nomination of Sultan Khan as Honorary Alderman of this great city. 3 months ago, Alderman Peter Abraham, on receiving the same honour, advised members, especially those newly elected, to remember that each of us, irrespective of party label, brought different abilities, perspectives to this place, and treasure the friendships which could result. I can think of few members who show day in and day out a natural warmth and fund of goodwill as Sultan Khan. He always had a smile for you, a genuine interest, and a joke, more often a belly laugh. Sadly, this place encourages confrontation and too often angry exchanges, but I never encountered 1 ounce of malice in him. To use a modern term too often applied now, he is one of life's good guys. I primarily had the good fortune to get to know Sultan better, as we both served on DC and public safety committees, which he chaired for a time. He unfailingly took a highly practical approach, concerned for the impact of the council's policies on Bristolians, as well as serving well his constituents in his ward for a decade. Sultan was never afraid to get down and help people across the city, including taxi drivers and those more recent arrivals in Bristol. We always had a wisecracking relationship. As some of you will know, I'm not a Johnny-come-lately conservative, but I boast of being a high Tory going back to the 17th century and arguably, some would say, belief in the divine right of kings. I once mentioned this jokingly to Sultan, and he shot back, "Is a high Tory a Tory high on drugs?" I leave you to draw your own conclusions. Congratulations, Sultan, on being proposed to this great honour. You richly deserve it, and I sincerely wish you and your family every happiness in the future.
Thank you. And I now ask full council to formally confirm the appointment of Sultan Khan as an honorary alderman of the City and County of Bristol. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Alderman Khan, would you like to come and get your certificate?
Thank you. Thank you all. I believe I've written a long speech, but I doubt that you all have time and energy to listen to that. So, like many friends, I think I will just mumble and say a few words. First of all, thank you for this. It is great to be part of this city. So, thank you. My Lord Mayor, councillors, friends, colleagues, it has been a pleasure, and real pleasure, to serve this city as a member of this chamber. Unlike some of you, or most of you, I was born in Bangladesh. With little education. I'd only done A-level type in Bangladesh, moved here during 90s, tried to get on with lives and make a living. Moved to Bristol in 2000. And some great friends always whispered that, why don't you join politics? But my political journey began in 1981, as 10 years old, when I first joined the political procession. I knew the party that my family support, but I didn't know why I was going there. And it was evening time, dusk, sun was going down, 10 years old, half a mile to the main road, and then joined the procession, and then went about a mile onwards without realizing, just shunting with everybody else, without realizing what I'm doing. Luckily, I was spotted by someone, and he said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm with everybody here. He said, who are you come with? I said, nobody. And he said, hang on. He held my hands, put me on a rickshaw and said, he paid for the journey, let's go home. So I went home. Anyway, subsequently, school student union and college student union. And here in 2000, when I come, as I said, started with business and so on, and friends, because I was labor-minded, political person, I believe in liberalism, I believe in people's right, I believe in equals right, and all of these things, and I believe in improvement in humans' life. So all of these reasons, some friends said, and I finally decided to run for office, and thankfully, and I'm grateful to people of Eastville that they have supported me, and I won 3 consecutive elections. It is great to serve people of Eastville, and it was great pleasure to serve this city as a councillor. And this will go down well in history as well, as a personal and hopefully in this city. I tried my best to serve my ward, people in my ward, who matters most than anything else. I've always, there could be 1 or 2 occasions that I didn't respond, or it slept through, or something had happened. But mostly I tried to go back to people and say, I will try and do something for you, or sorry, I can't do anything, it's not in my remit, you got to do this or that. And it was received well. So I don't know what improvement I made. I tried. I think that's what I can say in the city. I've worked, my experience with political parties, and I've changed color as well. So that's something that, happened recently. But principle not changed. I'm still a man with whatever I believe. I'm still a man who will always try to improve my next neighbor, my neighbor's life, or people surrounding where I am. So that will continue. Yes, I tried in many ways served the city in terms of committees that I was, public safety and planning. I hope that I hope that people will recognize that I tried to make a difference. I don't know how far it went. But I will share one small experience that I'm not indicating to anybody, but it's just an experience I think some of you who are in office need to take away and think whether there's something can be done. So, and then I'll finish it very quickly. I was Public Safety and Protection Committee Chair, and followed by I had an allegation against me. An allegation was made against me, and then I was removed from the chair, and then I put a defense, and then I was told that there will be an external lawyer will look into that, and I said fine, and then a few months later I heard that the allegation was withdrawn against me, but I was removed from the chair of the Public Safety and Protection. So that's fine. But what I'm saying is that somewhere maybe the justice was denied to me. So if that has happened to other people as well, other colleagues, then it's not going to set a good precedent. And I hope that those of you in power will think about it and see whether you can do something about it. My experience with political parties, I would say one thing, is that politics is something we all know. I was talking to good friend there, councillor for Hanbury, colleagues, we bring politics into politics, and we struggle to do things. We struggle to find consensus within the party as well. Well, I've seen a couple of parties. None of you maybe in this chamber seen two political parties, was maybe one or two of you. But it's always, there is slight difference. But one thing is always common is politics, is elbowing, is bambooing. I think we need to think more about collectively to serve people, serve city, rather than elbowing each other and all of these things. However, I would finish here saying, Gary, thank you so much for supporting me all the way. Tim, thank you. Jose and Alex as well. And Richard Eddy, my friend, thank you so much for seconding this motion because, as you said, you are a Tory on high drugs. Yes, that's true. But I wish all of you well, and I hope, I just want to say this lastly, that Bristol is a city, all of you know. It's a great city. And I'm privileged to be able to live here and work here and being a councillor as well. I don't have to give you a history lesson about Bristol. It has its good and bad. It is a business city. It was a business city. It was famous for its business, its slave trade, its piracy as well. It was famous once upon a time for its piracy. So, but Bristol has produced many great people, and I admire that. And may it be Sir Bernard Lovell, may it be Massive Attack, may it be a lot of good DJs, politicians. But I also would say this, that Bristol has produced a politician as well in the name of Marvin Rees, and that will be a part of history as well of Bristol. And I'm glad that I was able to work with him, serve with him. So this is what Bristol. Finally, I would say that I was talking to a fellow friend. He happened to be a college mate who lives in Bristol as well. We were talking about Bristol and UK and all this. And his last comment was that there is no country like UK, there is no place like, no city like Bristol, and I second that wholeheartedly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor is just asked to note that former councillor Anthony Negus was also nominated today but is unable to be with us, so his nomination will be deferred to a future meeting. Anthony, if you've stuck with us this long on YouTube, we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you to all councillors, aldermen, alderwomen, guests and everyone else for attending today's meeting. The next meeting of full council will be held on the 9th of November. Good evening.